Thank you and welcome back to those of you who are watching us online at home and to the audience here in Brussels in La Tricoterie, which is an award-winning social economy venue in the heart of Brussels. So now we're going to put under the spotlight some of the social entrepreneurs and social economy experts who we heard so much about before the break. And in this particular roundtable, we're going to be exploring the alliances for an economy that work for people. And we saw in that little video that the defining feature of the social economy is that it puts people before profits. So this is an element we're going to pick up on. Just as a reminder that if you'd like to ask a question to our panel, you need to use Slido. So you need to get your devices and phones out ready. You need to go to slido.com and you can take a picture of the QR code that you see on the screen now. Or you need to put in the hashtag SEAP 2021 for the Social Economy Action Plan. And there you'll have a chance to submit questions and our members of our panel will be able to answer them. And let me just introduce who I have on the stage with me. Here to my right, it's Marta Lozano Molano, who's the founding member of the Wazo Cooperative, which creates opportunities for rural communities in Spain, particularly the Extremadura region. And sitting here, I have Sophie Fridland, who's from the organization called Just Arrived, and it's for work integration for migrants in Sweden. And I have Stefan van Tulder, who's the founder of Talent Data Labs in the Netherlands. So we're going to have a chance to hear from each of them about their experience and what they've done, and then we'll be bringing in questions that you put to them. So let me start with Marta. Tell us the story of Wazo.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to share the story of Wazo because it's the story of a group of young people of a rural region who left their land looking for opportunities, who achieved a successful career in creative industries abroad, and then returned to support the sustainable development of their community. Extremadura, that is our region, is rural, is peripheral, is low populated, so we face many challenges related to unemployment, at risk of poverty population, transportation, but at the same time we have many, many potentialities. We have an amazing cultural and natural heritage, and that's why we decided to return. We returned to lead the change. We were tired of asking opportunities, so we decided to start offering opportunities for us and for others. But at the beginning in 2015, we thought that houses were built starting from the roof, and guess what? It's not. So that's how we arrived in social and solidarity economy. We understood that sustainable development was about people. And it's very similar to an airplane emergency. First, you need to put on your oxygen mask before being able to support others with their own mask. And this is what cooperatives are all about. So we decided to co-found our cooperative, Wazo Coop, that is a social cooperative working with social and solidarity economy and creative and cultural industries to support the sustainable development of the rural areas. So we empower the people from the local communities to boost their leadership, and we offer them meaningful experiences, capacity building opportunities, knowledge, so they can provide their positive impact. So this is our tools, social economy and creative cultural industries.
Thank you. Can you tell me how the social economy adds value to local communities, and why is that so important for rural areas? You've explained some of the challenges that exist in Extremadura, the lack of opportunity, the lack of transportation, the lack of infrastructure. How does the social economy add value and address that?
We all know very well what social economy can bring. It's about resilience, it's about sustainability, it's about inclusion. And in rural areas, it's very important. We are very focused in general in rural areas to social services, agri-food. But why I think that is very important, I will tell you from my perspective about the Extremadura perspective. because this is our perspective. And also, you know, this kind of peripheral, low-populated areas has to be also included in the mainstream. As I said, we have many challenges, but we have problems with electricity, internet, you know, these kind of things of rural areas. But we have great streets with very flat, you know, floors to have walks. We have luxury buildings with top technology, but all of them are empty because it's free. We can use it for free, but nobody does, because we are very focused in investing in things and not in people. And rural areas are about people. Social economy is about people. It doesn't only happen in my region, it's something general in my country. But we need to invest more in people, to invest in strategic plans involving effective mechanisms to reduce this kind of gaps that we have involving skilled people, to assist in these mechanisms of equality and equity as well, so we can foresee a scenario in short, medium, and long term. So I think that social economy is the key, but everything is not acceptable. We have to be creative, we have to be flexible, we have to be open-minded, and we have to recognize the legacy of the traditional social economy, but also, if we want to have a fairer future, we also have to be innovative.
Thank you. And now looking at the title specifically of our session, which is looking at alliances and partnerships for an economy that works for people. Sophie and Stefan, your organizations worked together, bringing your specific strengths to create something new. Can you tell us that story? How did that come about?
Yes, of course. Just to give you a little bit of background, so I work for Just a Ride. What we focus on is the first and second job in Sweden for people that have migrated from outside Europe. And as we have heard today, this is one of our biggest challenges, I think, in Europe, that there's a huge gap between foreign-born and people that already live in Europe. So this collaboration that we have with Talent Data Labs is that we basically match people through a system that can come over those challenges that we can see today. So you see three challenges mostly, which is language. It is, of course, that it's hard to validate people. And then lastly also that you can see that we are biased as human beings. Even if we know about this, we have a big, like it's really, really hard to not be. We kind of confuse competence with people that are like us. So I looked into the market, how can we overcome this? And I found Stefan. So maybe you can tell us a little bit on how we overcome these three challenges.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stefan. I don't work at the same company as Sophie. I work at Talent Data Labs. And the interesting thing we try to do with the market is very simply validating that certain traits and certain competencies, certain skills actually work out for a company, so lead to bottom line impact. And when we try to do that, so when we try to build profiles that have those competencies, one of the major things we notice is that a CV, like the way we traditionally look at talent, has almost no impact on someone functioning in society. But what we found with Just Arrived is that we're looking at CVs first, right? We're using LinkedIn, we're using social media, we're using a lot of things to validate whether someone is going to be able to function in, well, corporate society mostly. And none of these things really matter. So for, well, basically I Just Arrived, for immigrants and for people that are refugees that come from, imagine you have a degree at the University of Aleppo, right? It's a university that you can't validate anything of because it's gone, right? It's bombed, there's nobody there anymore. So what we're really trying to do is try to use what we know, scientifically know basically, to validate whether one of these immigrants can function highly or actually can even succeed fundamentally in a company. Yeah,
and to add on, we have increased the amount of people we have matched to a job with 500% since we started this collaboration. So it is working, and mostly also you can give feedback individually, even if this is automized. We don't need more staff internally at Just a Ride, and still we can give personal feedback for the people we cannot match, so they know what to improve to get into the labor market.
Thank you. I'm just curious. Obviously, you're a social enterprise. Are you a company or also a social enterprise?
Both.
Oh, you're both. Okay. So, because I would be quite interested to see if, as a company, you changed the way you did some things as a result of working together and collaborating with Sophie's organization, which clearly is a social enterprise, because I think this is one of the really interesting keys. I mean, you've got fantastic impact results, but has it changed the culture and the way that you do things?
First of all, I love this question. We were discussing it the other day because I think that's the core. So Nicholas said it as well, and I think before, Mohammed Yunus, of course, said it as well, is that we're trying to do things the same way over and over again, ultimately failing probably in the end. Sophie is one of those people that when she came to me, she basically said, you're doing a lot of the things you're doing for large corporates, right? Big names with a lot of cash that want to step in to hit financial effects. So can't we apply that somewhere? So she's the one that's been challenging us all the time, saying, okay, but listen, let's not chase the money, but let's chase the mass, the most amount of people. So that way of thinking, for me, was, given to me by Sophie. So for that, thanks.
Because the reason I ask this is I moderate lots of different events, and I was very struck by an event I moderated even a couple of years ago, looking at the changing labour market and the need for skills change. And someone there reported the statistics, and they said that they surveyed universities, and 75% of the rectors of the university said, yes, we think our students are absolutely ready. They're qualified for the business world. And they then went around and they interviewed the business sector, and exactly the same percentage of people said the students who come from university to the work environment are not qualified to work in a real world practical experience. So this is a core societal challenge, and you have linked up using your social values and your ethos with some of the hard data crunching and the numbers that you use to create something new. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this partnership, because that's the connective tissue of the social economy. We heard from Commissioner Breton, he talked about knitting things together, creating connections. What advice would you give, given that the result of what you did was when 1 and 1 is more than 2, it's 5 or more. So what advice would you give to people here about the power of collaboration?
Should I start? One thing I would do, because I don't come from the social business, this is the first company I work in that has the social aspect that is maybe higher than the monetary profit, but is to look at what other alliances are there in the corporate world and apply that to the social aspect and make sure, because people contact us all the time wanting to do things for pro bono, and that's great, but it never lasts. So you need to find a collab where we both make also a sustainable business profit as well. So that's really my recommendation to make it work in the long run. Yes.
Thank you. Stefan?
So I agree fundamentally with what Sophie said, but there's one thing that I think you can do to sort of find each other somewhere as well, and that's challenge each other a little bit, but subtly, right? Nudge each other. There's nothing wrong with experimenting a little bit, right? So our technology base it wasn't ready for this yet, because we were also talking about immigrants with no records whatsoever, right? So to find new ways of doing things also means you have to step outside, right? So you have to do something new, and if nobody's holding you accountable, if nobody's checking in on you, it gets very hard to do that casually, because you get stuck in your day-to-day, right? So everyone here must get stuck in one train ride or another, to refer to Yunus again, where it's really hard to step out if there's not someone that holds you accountable, right? And we find that with a lot of the parties we collaborate with, if nobody's holding you accountable at a certain point in time, if nobody's checking in on you, if nobody's measuring your progress, you're probably not going to succeed. And you're probably not going to have a really good time either, because we're beasts of burden in a certain way. So we try to win a little bit, right? So we try to grow as human beings. So that's what Sophie does for us, and what Just Arrived does for us as well. They hold us accountable. They show amazing records, right? They grow, well, 500%, I think, last year. And that's the, that's satisfaction. That's your internal motivation, right? And that's what you need.
Thank you. And I'm just reminding you all that you can submit questions to our panel via Slido. We'd be delighted to put questions to the panel. But let me now bring Marta in at this point. We've heard about the power of collaboration, and this is very much about alliances. If there are people who are watching this, and we know that many people have ideas about what they could do to improve their local community, and perhaps in the past their idea might be, well, we need to create an NGO to do it. What advice would you give them about saying, social enterprise might be the way to go?
My advice would be, I will make an example. For those who work with gender equality may know the expression of purple glasses. When you wear your purple glasses, you see the inequalities, the gender inequalities. And I would recommend to use the social economy glasses to change their perspective. But not only for those entrepreneurs who want to achieve something, to lead the change that they want in their lives, but also to the ecosystem, because without the ecosystem, it's impossible to make something in social economy. I would recommend to use these glasses to public authorities so they can be less pushy with social economy, try to make them fit in a suit that is too small for us, and also to social economy organizations in the territories that have to support the newcomers, to give this mentorship to help them to grow.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple of questions coming in on Slido, so let me invite you to reflect on that. We've got a question from Suzanne who says, what type of support do you need most to create or find these new alliances as a social enterprise? So, Sophie, you found Stefan. You went looking for something, you had a need and you went and found him. So what advice or what support would you have needed? Because that was probably a slow, painful process.
Of course, and in general, there is quite a little science behind these type of new issues that we have today. So it was quite tough, but I think I've always worked a lot with networking. So my biggest advice would be to go to these kind of events and find friends, and then ask them to help you find Stefan.
Stefan, what about you? What do you think is the support that's needed that would help people find a partner for a social enterprise? You weren't looking for a social enterprise partner when Sophie arrived at your door. But what advice would you give people to keep an eye out to see how they could fit in or fill a need in a growing social economy environment?
It's not necessarily true that I wasn't looking, right? So these networking events she's talking about I frequented them as well, right? Because I always try to see if there's something we can invest in or something we can do there. But what I'm kind of missing in the market, and maybe I'm just overseeing this, is a social economy incubator, like a startup engine that maybe facilitates the attraction of these. Well, usually what they do, like Entrepreneur First is a great example in the non-social space, right? But they take pairs, so they take two people and put them together and let them fix a problem, right? Not per se a problem they come in with, but a problem they define later on. And they pay them, they subsidize them a little bit. I think that's really effective in building entrepreneurs, but we could do the same in a social sphere, right? Especially when we have the subsidies, we have the development funds, right? We have plenty of resources to do this, so maybe I'm mistaken. Is there a source that does this?
So at local levels, and in fact our next panel is going to look at the issue of financing, so I think we will pick up on that. Marta, maybe I could bring you in on this. You talked about how in Wazo it was people who came together to create something, who started building something together. So networking and alliances were part of what you're doing. What was the thing that you needed most to bring the people together, to get them all around the table and agree, on what the problem was, what needed to happen, who was going to do what needs they were going to fulfill. I mean, that's a whole process.
It was a long process. We had to knock many doors to do it. The way for us to get the involvement of the community was to be able to ensure social programs. So we learn how to write the programs, be very clear with what are the necessities, the challenges, and how we can involve them. So for us, that was the way. Try to have the fund that from Europe, from the ministries, from the region, try to find this kind of work in order to be able to involve all of them. We are all very far in our region. We are very far from each other, and we need some funding to make the way.
I wonder if this is also linked to what came through strongly on the panel with the commissioners, was the link to the circular economy. How increasingly, in local areas, we're starting to say, well, what businesses are here? What products do they make? What inputs do they need? And can we find ways of filling some of those gaps and building on that? So those are the kinds, again, of alliances that could be the basis for social enterprises and cooperatives. Is there anything that you want to add around this issue of the circular economy?
I think that this is very interesting. It's very needed, but also we have to be aware of what is the context and how we implement this social economy in places where are very deficient. It's very difficult to have it because you don't have anything to recirculate. Yeah. So it's very nice to have the way of thinking, but also put it into the context with being aware of it.
Okay, thank you. Marta, we've got a little question. How did you explain the co-op to the local community? Was there any resistance? I mean, some people, you came back from the big towns to your small villages and the rural area, and you had all these big ideas.
It was, cooperatives are known because, in my place is rural, agri-food cooperatives are very well known, but other kind of cooperatives, worker cooperative, social cooperative as mine, are difficult. And the difficulty was to make them understand, because they think this is too good to be true. It's like you have social protection, you have sustainable jobs, and you are doing good for the community. This is too good to be true. So yes, a little bit, but to make them understand, to change the perspective, to put the glasses of the cops.
And given that many regions in Spain, and you mentioned this in Extremadura, face depopulation, young people are leaving because there's no jobs, they leave to go to the cities. Do you see the model that you developed with the Wazo cooperative as being a counterbalance, a way of attracting talent and keeping people in these areas?
We think that our model is successful. In fact, we are trying to make others have the same model as we have, and we are developing social projects. This is very interesting. We need to cooperate because we are those who are living the places. The people don't come to our places. We live the place. So it's essential to work with us, but also with other regions. We are very open with this. We have to collaborate with people from other countries, from other regions, and that's the way to create the pathway to follow so we can live and the others can come with us.
Thank you. I'm just going to have a little look at the other questions. Who should be in the ecosystem of support? We have one question which I'm not sure that we're qualified on this panel to answer, which is in which countries does social entrepreneurship make up 15% of GDP? And again, that was at the beginning. I think that was one of the commissioners who said that currently it's 10% of GDP, but in some countries it's 15%. We don't have the answer, but I'm sure we can make sure we can get the answer for you. So I think this is a great question perhaps for you, Stefan. How do you measure your social impact? Sophie, I mean, I'm sure you can tell us here, and perhaps your impact is very clear in the number of people you get into jobs. But Stefan, how do you measure your social impact?
As a provider of software, I mean, so I sometimes make a joke and I say like I basically do nothing. Sophie does all the work. I roll my face over a keyboard and make sure whatever comes out works for her. But more recently, we've also been looking at things like the happiness, satisfaction, engagement, burnout indexes and everything. We're very curious about how we can prevent not just reduce, but also prevent most of the burnouts going on in the climate today. Now, we're not so successful at basically stopping people from getting burnouts, but we're really successful at when we find people that are volatile, basically, so that are at the space where they're uncomfortable and they risk a burnout, basically. We're very good at guiding them and aiding them very early on. But if we don't get to those people, so reach is, I think reach is one of the major things we're talking about a lot. To not make it too esoteric, basically, we try to help people get some psychological aid before they fit in an environment where they're just gonna guarantee burnout before that, and already talk about transition, so move them to other positions, which is, it's really difficult to say if they would have gotten a burnout then, but we do find that they're definitely not happy in the environment they are, and burnouts still happen all the time.
Of course. Sophie, how do you measure your social impact?
Well, for us, it's quite easy to turn it into numbers. If you look what an unemployed person costs for the society, for example. So I think this year we have saved Sweden around 260,000 million euros in unemployment fees, only through our little business. So that for us is quite easy, I would say. But then I think the social impact you do for the human being getting their first job after fighting for very often too many years, you cannot put a price on that. That's what motivates me.
Thank you. We've come to the end of the time for this panel. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, to Marta, to Sophie, and to Stefan. So can we say a warm thank you to the three of them?